Welcome to the PFD Performance YouTube channel. Pretty friggin' deadly.
Well, here we are again, back at her, and I think we might have things figured out with these heads. Cross our fingers. I'll flip you around. We ordered some stuff. So in here we've got new retainers. We ended up going with the upgraded tool steel and the 10 degree. So that ends up being a wider angle, supposed to be better with loading, as well as they're lighter than these ones. At least they should be. Maybe I'll bring the scale out and we can double check. We also picked up these spring seats. So that's going to be a little bit better than just the shims. We got some new 10 degree locks that work with that. And we got some offset locks to help with trying to get a little bit more spring install height on our intake valves. So I'm hoping with the mix of all these things, oh, and I guess lastly, some new seals. Hope they're the right size. We'll double check. But that was all done to try and get more install height, to try and target the right seat pressure and enough clearance from coil bind on the spring. Our tightest one, we were at 0325, which is definitely too tight. I talked to a few people. Some said you should be good to run it. Others said, you know, shoot for at least 05. I was also concerned with the fact that it gave us fairly high spring pressure, a seat pressure, which is kind of above the recommended by the lifter. So hopefully, I'll cross my fingers, I'll get this all set up, and I hope that gives us the right install height that we're looking for, which will then give us the proper seat pressure. It'll take a little bit of pressure off of the max lift, and then it's just a matter of, are we going to have any interference with our rockers, with these retainers and all that? I'm crossing my fingers, no. But what I'll probably do is I'll get you guys set up here on the time lapse, and you can watch me go through putting all these together, measuring them all, and then we'll look at the numbers after I'm back. Progress has been made. I'm actually incredibly happy with how this turned out. So I'll walk you through my beautiful mind moments. So I just measured all the shims, and surprisingly, they were fairly consistent except for one which was quite thick and one which was just a little thicker. But then what I did is kind of did a baseline of using the offset locks with the new locator on the intake, and then the regular locks with the shim on the exhaust to try and tighten things up. Because my other beautiful mind moments, the exhaust was definitely quite tall before. Anyway, we went through. The intake on a couple was still pretty loose and led to a spread where, you know, I had a 1.985 install height versus 9.8 versus 9.65 versus 9.7. And then on the exhaust, it ranged from 1.60, 1.98, 1.94, which was the tightest, and then 1.955. So I added a couple shims to the intakes, and I put the biggest shim that I measured on the widest gap. I doubled up the shims on the one exhaust that was still measuring too wide. And then I took the shim out of the tight one. And that kind of led to a 1.969, 1.960, 1.969, 1.960, 1.965, 1.960, 1.960, and 1.955. So my spread really was, you know, the tallest one's 1.969 and the tightest one's 1.955 and the loosest one is 1.969. So a way tighter spread across the board. And that leads to a seat pressure ranging from 177 pounds to 183 pounds when the max is 185. So I'm really happy with that. And then the max pressure is essentially just you add the lift, and that ends up around 510, like 506 to 512. The max is 535, so you're really good there. On the distance to coil bind, we end up in the range of 0.075 to 0.09, which ends up being actually 0.08. Yeah, 0.08, which 0.09, 0.08. Too many numbers. Either way, kind of the rule of thumb is between 0.06 and 0.1, so we're well within that. So that leads me to believe I finally got this kind of set up real nice. And then the nice thing with these locators is you can see there's a shoulder and it fits pretty snug to the valve seat, so there's not a lot of wiggle room there. So that should help keep the bottom of the springs in a really happy spot, and they're thick, so they should protect the head. I'm gonna go quickly run and grab my little scale. I think there's a chance these retainers might be titanium because they feel quite light, but I'll show you. You can see, focus, please, focus. Yeah, it's a little tricky to see, but there's like some wear marks on it already. That one's not the worst. Let's see if I can find one here. Got my handy dandy little organizer, but they all kind of got just a little bit of wear on them. And I think that's, from what I read, the downfalls of titanium and street driving is they're not as durable. Anyway, do a nice little pan here, show you where I'm at. So the next step is to put the new valve seals on. I'm just going to use a socket, a tall socket, to try and tap those on. And then I'll install the springs. And we get to do it all over again, except this time we get to take the already new springs off of the other head and fix this, because I caught it on the second one, not the first one. But at least we caught it. So there's that. All right, I'm gonna go quickly grab my scale. We're back. And I wanna preface this tech moment by saying I use this scale for coffee and not some other things that you might think the scale could be used for. Anyway, turn her on. zeroed out. Old one, 18.55 grams. New one, 21.85. So that leads me to believe those old ones probably are titanium, and these ones are the tool steel, and they're really not that much heavier. So let's just go 0. So only 3.3 grams difference. Now, I do think the locks I have were lighter. So there's 6.1 grams combined. Whereas now, there's 7.1. So an extra gram there. So if we really want to do a complete assembled check plus the locks. So we're at 24.63. We'll zero that. We'll come back in here with that. And I think these are probably the same. So 4 grams heavier with the offset locks and 4.3 grams heavier with the regular locks. That's really not a lot. So I'm happy with that. And now I'm hoping that the profile of the retainer actually helps with the spring, or like the retainer to rocker clearance. I'll see if I can hold these in such a way that you can see. Like, you can definitely see the ones on the left are a little bit thicker and stay quite a bit more raised. So I'm hoping we get a little bit more clearance with the rocker, but we won't find that out for a little bit. Anyway, I'm gonna button this head up. I don't think you need another time lapse of me fighting with the spring compressor and getting the springs on. You've seen that before on the last head that I get to redo. But I just wanted to fill you in that that's kind of what part of our setback was here, was getting the valve spring and the valve train set up to work well. Fingers crossed. But hey, it's a little PFD tech moment. Big engine builder, guys, apparently now. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll update you once this thing's back together, maybe on the engine block. Well, the plot thickens again. Yeah. See the measurements here. Definitely the intakes were tight. The exhausts were loose, and whoa! What's going on there? Well, that exhaust valve is that part number. And the other exhaust valves are that part number. I don't know about you guys, but I generally expect the same exhaust valve for every cylinder. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't think I am. Anyway, who's and what's? You'll see this one versus that one. One of them's 0.1 inches longer. It's also 0.02 bigger diameter, but not really. So I checked those part numbers, Brodix part numbers, pretty easy to find. The other ones that there's 3 of, and I'm pretty sure the other head has 4 of them, they are a 1.88 inch exhaust valve. Factory length, like 5.394 stem length. The other one is a 1.90 valve with the extra 0.1 inch of stem. But then when I take my calipers, the 1.88 inch ones, they measure out at like 1.8815, 1.882, 1.8825. The 1.90 measures at 1.8835. Doesn't make sense to me. And it's kind of making things a little difficult, as you might imagine. So I'm going to have to do some reading. Maybe, use a lifeline, phone a friend, 50-50. Ask the audience. Maybe you guys can drop something down in the comments. If I get this, posted anytime soon, I'd love some feedback. My gut says maybe something happened. And they're just like, oh, I got a valve that'll work. And then put it in. Or maybe something happened with the one valve and it broke. I know these heads came off of 454. So maybe it dropped a valve before and something happened. And they put what they had in. And maybe they machined the head of the valve down so it was similar to the others, which I'd expect a valve that's 0.02 bigger to not be, within 0.002 of the other ones. Not that I've got a high-end caliper. It's the Nico. But it's got extra digits. Not that I really trust the last one. But what the heck? So, yeah. Here, maybe I'll just set you down for a second. Yeah, you just stay right there. And I'll flip the head up so you can see. Without having all the valves all fall out. Got them. But I'll show you what we're kind of looking at here. You still there? Perfect. So that one's normal. Normal. This one's the different one, but it doesn't really look that different. And that's the normal one. Now, just for visual sake, I'll do this. And you'll really get a feel for the fact that that one's taller. But I'll also show you, I would expect a valve that's 0.02 bigger to be more bigger. But there's just a slight difference in the face of the U. Focus. And it's maybe just a little bit thicker, which makes me believe maybe they turned it down in a lathe or something to make it the same. But either way, it's making it so I obviously can't get that one to have the same install height. By a lot. It also makes a fellow wonder, how it was happy before. Maybe that's where some of the valve train stuff was going on before. I don't know. So I might just, like I said, use a lifeline. But I can get a new valve. It's $75, and I'll just have to wait again and lap it in. But I think that's probably my best option. And then it'll all match and everything will be happy. And I can finally get this engine back together. But I swear, guys, it's been one thing after the other. That's what happens when you buy someone else's project. I mean, it ran. It sounded okay. But it was just idling. I guess that's why it's a good deal. I think that's it for today. I'm going to sip on a beer and think. And I'll come back to you guys once I've got it figured out. Thanks again for watching. Pray for us. Need all the strength I can get at this point. Okay. catch you later. Stay deadly.